Sean Donnelly. I appreciate you doing this, man.
Of course, no problem.
First off, I have to ask because I start with every show that I talk to a live entertainer with, the idea of Zoom shows, and the way of acquiring a new audience. For you as a comedian, what has the past year been like as far as doing the job? It's been a bit different, I'd say, right? No live shows for a while. Has there been any pros to Zoom shows as far as acquiring a new audience by way of doing that?
I don't know if people are acquiring new audiences doing
Really?
Zoom shows.
You don't think so?
Well, I think I don't know. Okay, so I'm a purist when it comes to stand-up, but I think the pluses of the Zoom shows is that there's less pressure, and it's not what I signed up for. So and it's gonna not to go away. It won't go away. But live stand-up to me, and not to sound too dramatic, but it's a very special thing. And also there's a lot of factors that Zoom shows have that live stand-up shows do not have.
Sure.
Like the unspoken, whatever that vibe is between, performer and audience, and being in the same room is a huge part of that. So the way that I've thought of Zoom shows, a lot of them is like, yeah, they're great because they give us an opportunity to work out some jokes or have a little fun for that medium. But it's not like I know there's some people who have started during COVID, and I think it'll be it's good that you started on Zoom shows to practice, but once you're thrown in front of a real audience, it's
that's the real test.
It's the real test. It's just not it's not exactly the same thing. And as far as like when I haven't heard, unless I'm just out of the loop, I haven't heard of one regular Zoom show, meaning like, live comedy show that has like blown up to the point where people are like, oh my God, this thing's like legitimate. All of them have all over the map. I've done some really good ones that have like a couple hundred people or 100 people there, whatever it is. And then I've done some ones that are have 6 people. Again, it's kind of like, it kind of mirrors like real stand-up in a way with that, like as far as audiences go. So overall, I don't know if it's like garnering audiences for people. I think that podcasts are, and then maybe live like people doing video and then posting that online and then using those clips might. But the idea of going to a Zoom show, I think everybody this whole year has used as like an alternative. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I always start with that because it is interesting. I feel like I've talked to some musicians, and for them, I see how they could benefit from it because it's music. I mean, people are at home. They have nothing else to do, listening to music, watching streaming shows. That way you can acquire a base that way. But comedy, it's a little bit different because it's so reliant on human interaction.
Yeah, I guess it's like maybe people are acquiring people. I don't know, man. That's great. But whenever I've done one, I've never thought of it as like, oh my God, this is the same exact thing that I do in normal times.
Yeah,
like
not even close.
It's not even close. It's apples and oranges.
Sure.
So that's where I stand on it. It never would be like it would never be the same thing to me. I don't have the. I can't lie to myself and go, oh yeah, this is just this
totally the same.
Yeah. Because even when ones are going well, like the ones that I've done, it's like they're going well because you're kind of bringing attention to the situation that it's a Zoom show, and you're like, hey, this is weird. We have to do these. That's always everybody's beginning of everybody's set on a Zoom show, and it's like, yeah, let's like it's good for now, but let's when we shake out of this thing, we can go back to having humans around each other in a room and enjoying like this unspoken bond kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you're up in New York, aren't you?
Yeah, I live in Queens. I'm from Long Island. Yeah.
From Long Island. Now I know you made a move at some point in your life to where you are now, right? And
nope,
did you move?
I'm from Long Island. I was in Brooklyn, Williamsburg for a while. Then I was in Sunnyside, Queens. Now I'm in Astoria, Queens.
Okay, so it's not that big of a move then.
Oh, no. I've been in New York my whole life.
Yeah, right. So I mean, at the start of everything, I mean, you kind of had to be losing your mind because there was really nothing going on.
Oh, absolutely. You're on lockdown and you're not doing much at all.
Sure.
And it was the longest break, speaking of like not doing stand-up, it's like, it was the longest break I've had in almost 15 years of doing stand-up. So
that's crazy.
Like the longest I went before that was nine days.
Wow.
And then after 3 months of not doing a spot, it was like really weird. Like, it was really, really strange. So yeah, at the time I was in another apartment in Long Island City, and I had a roommate, and we were friends. So it actually worked out. Like, we didn't have too many issues, and we hung out a bunch during like the crazy part of COVID,
Yeah, crazy. Now, growing up in New York, what was young Sean like growing up before comedy and acting even came into the picture? What type of kid were you growing up?
I was funny with my friends. I think I was affable of some sort. I was a skateboarder in high school, so I thought I was cooler than everybody. Oh yeah. When I was like 60 pounds lighter. Yeah. And I was a skateboarder. I hung out with the same crew of friends. I still hang out with some of them from Long Island. And I was just, that's the best way to put it. I was part of that skateboarder crew, and we were kind of like your quintessential skateboarders, just like not bad kids, but like also kind of assholes at the same time. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
I get it.
Like wise asses who were like really didn't mean anything,
Yeah, no. So I take it school wasn't your thing then?
School? Nah, not really. I was like, I went to college and everything, but I wasn't excited to be at school. I wish I got
to study.
No, well, no, I would do that. Like, I wasn't terrible that way. I didn't fail out of school, but like, I wish I could do like college now. I'd be way more into it. More into it. Yeah. Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cause I think you just learn a lot more later on in life, and you're like, damn, if I
you
really
realize.
just took the time then, that couple minutes, I wouldn't have to worry about this shit anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Exactly.
Now, you're kind of like in the epicenter, though, of comedy. It's at least back then. I feel like it could have shifted a little bit more towards LA. But for you, how'd you fall into it? I know you've done acting, but how'd you fall into comedy? Was it just by going to all these clubs and seeing live comedy that by way of doing that, you've garnered an interest to pursue something like that?
Well, I should say, like, I wasn't an actor before a comic. I started to. It came after. Yeah. So the way that I got into it, and this is the real I always want to say some kind of romantic story. The real reason is, the romantic part of it is my dad, I used to watch stand-up comedy with my dad. I was always a diehard fan. I wanted to do it so bad for years and years. And then I would always put it off. So when I was like in my early 20s and I wanted to do it, I put it off. And when I was like, and then by the time when I was 28,
late.
I was like, I started when I was 28. So I started pretty late. And when I was 28, I was running a show. I was like, I just want to be around it. So I was producing a show, this place called Jack Dempsey's, with a comic named Joe DeVito, a really funny comic. And Joe DeVito, in passing to me, he said, "Hey, I know you've been wanting to do this. There's an open mic around the corner from here at a taco place called Maui Taco. You should go check it out." And I went, he goes, "Just go check it out and see if you want to go up." And the real story is I went to Maui Taco, and if you're not a comic, you're not going to open mics in New York City. So you don't realize how bad they can be. So I went to Maui Taco, and it was awful. It smelled bad. The lights were on. People were eating their tacos. Nobody's paying attention. And then on top of it, all the comics were bad because it was open mic. So I watched the show, and I was like, oh, I could do this. It would still take all of my courage to go up there, but I could go up and I could be this bad in this room and not feel as bad as being on like a regular show, whatever. I didn't know what I was saying. I just knew that what I was watching was so horrendous. It gave me more of the confidence to be like, I'll try it once, like that. So that's literally what I did. I like maybe a week or two later, I went back. I had a shot of tequila and a Corona, and I went up and did my first 5 minutes.
Do you think you would have been able to do it without the tequila or Corona?
Yeah, but I would have been way more nervous.
Way more nervous. So it kind of like primed you.
Yeah. What does alcohol do? It makes gives you that beer courage.
Right. Just like musicians. It's funny. Buddy Guy still does it. He's like 84 years old. He still has to have 2 shots of Remy XO before he gets on stage or he can't play.
Really?
The guy's won 8 Grammys. Come on, buddy.
Yeah. Apparently Van Morrison has bad stage fright as well.
Isn't that crazy? Like these guys have played everywhere. They've once, and they still can't shake it.
Yeah, and the what's his name was the same way apparently, Mitch Hedberg, and for comedy.
It's so strange.
That's why I think he wore sunglasses.
Oh, that makes sense. So oh wow, I wonder if the same thing's done with Joe Satriani. I don't know what the story is behind that. He wears glasses too.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It
So
is
does
interesting.
Van Morrison, so it must be
Yeah.
part of it. Yeah. Well.
That's very interesting. Now you said you watch comedy with your dad. Who are the guys in the house that you and your father would watch?
Well, we'd always watch like not it wasn't stand up. We'd watch like Abbott and Costello, and then I would
Mm.
listen to he had like George Carlin records.
Oh wow.
And then when I got a little bit older, I started getting into my own like my own ones I liked, like Brian Regan and Jim Gaffigan,
love
and
'em.
yeah, and like the guy, like I would just watch all the shows. So they had like back in the 80s and early 90s, they had every channel had its own like stand up showcase show. So
Mhm.
VH1 had one called VH1 Stand Up Spotlight. MTV had one called MTV Half Hour Comedy Hour. They had Comic Strip Live, which I think was on Fox. Maybe they had a whole bunch of these that I would watch all of them. They had in that evening at the Improv, which lasted for a while.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Reagan's great. He's interesting. I mean, I know your comedy it's uncensored, and I love it. The half hour special is how I found you. I watched every single season during COVID.
Oh, nice.
I got hooked on it. But to get back to Regan and to draw the comparison between how your comedy is so uncensored to his, do you find it quite a skill to be able to interact with a room like someone like that does, or any comedian in that sense, to be clean, to do an entire act as animated as he can do it, but clean? I mean, do you think that's hard?
Sure. I think it's hard. I think it's preferable. And I think I curse a lot in my everyday life.
So it's relatable.
So that's why I curse on stage. But
Right.
I gotta be the last whatever amount of years I've been trying to curse less.
Curse less.
I think it's admirable not to, unless it works for the joke. I think
Sure.
that's what it should be. So over the years, I've been trying to do it less and less. But when you curse in your daily life, it's harder. But what he does is so hard to. The most respect ever I have in comedy is when you're clean, but you're not corny clean. Where you're not going
Right.
up there going, "Hey, I'm the so and so. I'm the clean comic." When you're not saying that to people, but you're
Sure.
actually clean, like Nate Bargatze or Ryan Hamilton or guys like that, or even John Mulaney, who's
Mhm.
clean and probably the best out there. So I have the most respect for that. If you're clean and then you're not thought of that way, and you're not
Right.
just going for an angle and you're just trying to be, and that's you.
Mhm.
I think that's the best thing there can be.
Right.
I think it's easy. You say dirty words. It's easy to get laughed on stage. That's just a fact, and everybody
Right.
knows it. Even if
Mhm.
people want to pretend they don't know it, they know it.
Yeah,
Comics
because you
don't.
got people drinking, and once that
Yeah.
starts to happen, you're like, "Oh, this guy's great, man." It's like, no, he's just swearing. Like, there's no, the context
Yeah.
is horrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, what were the formative years like for you as a comedian? So, like post open mic. So this is like once you started to do it and do it and do it. Was it a struggle for you? And was there a moment where you were like, I don't know if I could do this. If I can't do this, what's the backup plan?
I was working jobs in a facility, so like
wow.
where you do like the building repairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and then I had no like backup plan. I had those were like my day jobs while I was doing this, and then I got more and more shows, and then things started working out better where I was able to do this as a job, and I haven't had a day job in like 9 years or something.
Oh, that's a dream.
Yeah, it's great, but it's also then you it gets to a point where you're worrying about the work side of this,
Or a pandemic.
or a pandemic, exactly. And I definitely just kept going because it becomes like not old hat, but it becomes like party where you're like,
Mhm.
well, what do you mean? Why would I stop? Kind of thing.
Right.
But there is a point like about between like 5 and 8 years in where like it's about 5 years in, 5-6 years in, where like it's like the 5-year slump where especially if you're starting to get things in the city, like that's happened to me where I was getting booked on spots. I was working in a couple different clubs. I was getting stuff in New York City, but I wasn't getting any TV stuff. And I had friends that were getting TV stuff. So it's very hard not to compare how you're doing to how your friends are doing during.
Right.
It's a very group activity, stand-up comedy, but it's also a very lone wolf activity where you're worrying about yourself while you're also hanging out with all people that do the same thing you do. So you're some of them you're in competition technically because of type or because of but you don't think of it that way because they're your friends and you're hanging out, but you're getting jealous. You're getting maybe get bitter at times because you're like, well, screw that. Why are they getting this? I'm not getting that. So that usually comes to a head between 5 and 8 years. for most people I've talked to. And for me, it was like, well, what the hell? And then by year 6.5 or whatever it was, I started getting a couple things, and I that really got into like the industry side of things.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, who were
Yeah.
the guys that you came up with in New York? Was there any that kind of fell off the track? I know Mark Maron does this one. He has this one story where he says you go to these comedy clubs, these zanies, and you see all these photos of people on the wall, and you go, I wonder what happened to that guy, because they just
Yeah.
disappear. Who were there people that you came up with that you were close with that kind of just fell off the comedy trail?
Yeah, and I can't think of any names right now because you know what's so funny about comedy is everybody quits and nobody quits is the same. It's the same thing. It's the same amount of like truthfulness when it comes to stand-up comedy, because the amount of people that I've said, oh yeah, I wonder what happened to that guy, are all also the amount of people that I say, oh wow, he still does it. Like you'll see somebody go, oh yeah, all right. So a lot of people like because of comedy is how people kind of decide what it is for themselves.
Sure.
Somebody could take 2 months off and go, no, I still do it. I just took 2 months off, which I never agreed with, but I just think I guess you're technically still doing it if you're doing shows, you know?
Sure.
So yeah, there was definitely people that fall out, but nobody you would know. If I mentioned their names, you wouldn't know them as people that I started with that never got to a certain point and maybe decided to do something else, you know?
Right. How about the ones that stuck with it and came out with you? And
Yeah, that's like Mark Norman. Do you know Mark Norman?
Oh wow,
And
yeah.
and started with him in New York when he moved here, and what's his name? Dan St. Germain. I'm really good friends with. I don't know if you know who that is.
You used to
And,
have a podcast with them, right?
I did. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. It was called My Dumb Friends. And then there's a bunch of others. There's Joe List I've known for a long time. Dan Soder I've known for a long time. So like started with a lot of these guys, and also Mike Lawrence. I don't know if you know who Mike Lawrence is. He's a big roast guy. He's a super, super funny comedian. So there's a bunch of guys that I know. A lot of the guys still working it, but then a lot of guys stop, and you know, you stop hanging out with people without realizing it because they're not coming to the same spots you're coming to, you know?
Right. Now, do you think there's been a shift, like an industry shift as far as the epicenter of the industry in itself? Because so a lot of people say at one point it was New York. Now a lot of people are saying now it's LA. Do you think there has been a shift in the scene as far as the epicenter of the industry in itself?
Well, it depends on what industry you're talking about.
Comedy.
So you're talking about stand-up comedy?
Yes, stand-up.
Okay. Stand-up comedy? It was never LA. It was
Really?
never. Yeah, you can. Why? Because of the Comedy Store thing?
No. What it was is there's some people who say that just stand-up back then was bigger in New York, and then it went to LA, and then it went. People say that it was like a pendulum. It would go back and forth. But from you, someone who's rooted in New York your entire life, I just want to see your take on that.
I would say as far as stand-up goes, I think that New York, even I know I'm from here and it sounds biased, but New York has always had the edge over LA. And it's not I think you could say for show business, obviously it's LA, and for the amount of work that you can get.
Sure.
But as far as stand-up, I think of stand-up as its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's part of show business, and it leaks into show business, but it has like its own weird like street rules or something, you know what I'm saying? So I would say New York has always been the top contender with stand-up because it's just sheer number of spots that you could do in a night makes it a better place for stand-up. Because to be honest, I think for me, LA was like number one place to like, if you're going to go out there and try to get on an acting gig, well, so you help your stand-up career at the same time, whatever you want to do. But as far as good stand-up cities go, like Chicago is a better stand-up city than LA is. It's just a fact. Like there's more shows and it's like, it's easier to get around. LA, whenever you go there, you can do like one show in a night because it takes you an hour to get to the next spot. So, and two tops, two shows tops.
Mm-hmm.
In New York, you can bounce around to one area of the city that has like, 5 different spots. So like, I'm not basing it off comics. I'm just basing it off like sheer number of amount of spots that you can get and availability of being able to do it, because that's at the basis of this thing is there's no there's other things. People have acting classes, people have this, people, improv classes. With stand up, it's just a matter of the amount of it's repetitions and how many times you're getting up, and that's why stand up classes are always kind of people make fun of them because nobody's teaching anybody how to be funny. They might teach them basics like where the light is and how to hold the microphone and the basics of setup, punchline, but you're not going to walk out of a stand up class and be like, oh, I'm a funnier person than I was.
No, it doesn't do that.
So when it comes to New York, as far as being the top city goes, I think it's always been that way for stand up, not for show business.
Sure, absolutely. That kind of leads me into you and acting. How did that come to fruition for you? I mean, how did that get brought to you? That opportunity fall in your lap?
Well, it wasn't really a matter of falling in my lap. So I got to a certain level with stand up, as far as like, some credits here and some credits there.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is that gets you a manager and an agent, and then the agency, they don't make much off, even somebody that's not known. They're not going to make much off of, so they're also trying to get you acting jobs as a comedian, because I guess, comedians act like themselves and they're, whatever. So, that's what happened. The agencies that I was with, they got me auditions, and I booked some of those auditions. So every time with the acting, like, that's such a world that I it's so much fun, but I don't consider myself a honest to goodness actor because there's so much to it that I probably couldn't do. But every time I'm getting one of those, that's like starting over each time. Like I've been trying to get to the second level of acting for a while, meaning like recurring roles on something, or like a big role on something. It's hard to get into, but I've done little things here and there, and I've done a couple of them that are really fun. But I mean, like, overall, I do a lot of bit parts, but that's just like audition to audition. So comedy is what brought that out. So it was like getting a couple of getting the late night spots, or getting to a festival, or meeting somebody who's like, oh, we'd like him for this. That's what happened. Like, stand-up comedy is the reason I did any acting that I've done.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. No, it feels like there's that a lot of stand-up comedians do. You'll see they have some acting credits. None of them are really big or lead roles. They're all little bits, but I was just wondering how that all comes to be. But that makes sense now. You get little lines here and there. Eventually that can grow into something else. Like Marin, he eventually got his own show for a little bit, but that's all he did. He was a big guy. He was a big guy. And he's also a New York comic. But
who's that? Are you talking about?
Marin?
Oh, Marin, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But no, that is interesting. That's what I wanted to know. But now, when did you start touring across the country and booking like gigs and out of state? Was that something that you self booked for a while, or did you have a manager at that point? Because you already started late in the game, so you I didn't know if you got a manager right away, or you self booked the first time you went out of state and across the country.
I would, for the first few years, I didn't do road stuff right away, and part of the reason is because I had that day job here, so I couldn't go do like I wasn't trying to get into weekends at clubs around this area. So I was doing like weekend shows that, like, my friends, my buddy Nick Cobb was a really funny comic. He was the first one to really take me on a road gig. Where I would open for him on these road gigs. And that was like ones that he was getting himself. So some of them were like parties or this or that. So those were like I don't want to, because a lot of them were really fun. So I shouldn't call them the bottom rung of road gigs, but like they're like the beginner ones. And then when I ended up getting a touring agent, they got me weekends at clubs where you do 5 shows and you're headlining. That was after a couple of credits and that kind of stuff. So yeah, at first it started with me, and then it was once I had people in place that could help me. They helped me out get like the weekends that you would know of, like going to see somebody at Funny Bone or Arlington Draft House. I don't even know where you're based. Are you in DC?
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, you're in Chicago. Oh, great.
Zanies,
yeah, okay.
Zanies,
you said up in New York, so I thought that you were down south somewhere.
No.
Oh yeah, Chicago is great. Yeah, like Zanies. Like I had my agency would get me Zanies, like that kind of thing.
We had 4 of them here until I think last 2019. We had one in the suburbs that shut down. So there was, it was 3 here: Zanies, Rosemont, Zanies, Chicago, Zanies in St. Charles, Laugh Factory, Chicago, Damon Williams Comedy Club, which is Riddles. I mean, we had a whole bunch.
Yeah, I did all the Zanies. So I would do the Old Town Zanies, the Rosemont Zanies, which was great, and St. Charles. I
one in the barn.
One of the barns. It's a weird place. Yeah. But it's gone now, right?
It's gone now, but it was gone because the establishment crumbled. It wasn't Zanies, I guess. It was the establishment, and Zanies was just unfortunately housed inside.
Yeah, from being there, I can understand that because it was like a very old-fashioned
Oh
kind of
yeah,
resort place. It
very
was very,
strange.
yeah. It was like in the middle of nowhere. But they had what's the Italian beef place, the famous one?
They had Portillo's over there.
Portillo's right there. Yeah,
Great.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I was there for a few days. I ate lunch there every day I was there.
it's so great. It's so bad for you, but it's so great.
Oh yeah, it's so great.
Yeah. Now, how does your content come to be? I mean, how do you write? I mean, is there a certain process to this, or is it as your day goes on, as stuff comes to you, you just voice memo it, write it down? What's your process in putting together your show?
I jot down ideas on my phone or on a notebook if I have one
Yeah.
with me, and then I have to go on stage and work them out. Like I'm not. I wish I was a page to the stage
So
guy.
it's more wing it, just
That's
do
what
it
I
as it comes.
do it as it comes. So if I think I've said something funny in my head and I go, this could be funny, I might tell a friend, text it to somebody, or might tweet it
Sure.
and see if it gets a reaction. And then I have to say it at a show and get the confirmation that it's funny from the audience, and then go from there. So
And
that's
then,
usually how
yeah.
I do it. Yeah.
Interesting. I asked because I just got done seeing Mike Young's comedy special. I talked to him, and in his special that came out in November, the way it was cut was they would show him on stage doing a special, and then it would show him in the process of his joke where he have no cards out, and then he's looking in the mirror, recording himself, telling the jokes to the mirror to himself. So I didn't know what your process was. So some people do it differently. It was interesting.
Yeah, the mirror thing. I didn't think anybody did that after a certain point
I
because
know.
I don't see how it. I don't see how that unless
No, it
you're
was interesting.
that
Very intriguing.
that yeah that's interesting because I don't see how that helps because you're still going to be in front of an audience telling the joke, and to me the best possible outcome is if you're sounding as natural as possible.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
like the guy who was the best at that was Patrice O'Neill. I don't know if you remember Patrice O'Neill,
Yeah.
but
They have a good
I
documentary on him.
yeah, Patrice O'Neill, he figured out the best formula for comedy because you couldn't tell if what he was saying is something he said before, or if it was riffed, or if it was crowd work, or if it was just coming to him from a lightning bolt. Like
Right.
you couldn't. And to me, that's the goal when it comes to stand up is just talk. And then it's supposed to sound like you're just talking.
Right.
But this stuff, good chunk of it's written, that kind of thing. So
Sure.
when people do I'm going to rehearse in front of a mirror, I'm like, that's just going to make you sound rote, you would think. But maybe it probably
think.
works for Mike. I'm sure it works.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
guess it
Mike.
works.
Mike, is he from Chicago?
No, Mike is from he's from Michigan. He started like I think it was like early 2000, somewhere around there. I know he left though. He left it. He was getting big in comedy. He opened for Rogan for a few years, but then he left and did movie stuff. So when he came back after a 5-year break, it was like starting over again because you had to rebuild and get back into the clubs, get back into the game.
Okay.
So that's why not a lot of people know about him, but he's
Yeah.
amazing. He's great.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you mentioned something about Patrice O'Neill where you said that he would get up there and you wouldn't know if he said it before, stuff like that. That leads me into the question I want to ask. You've done a comedy album and you've done Comedy Central's Half Hour. People say that after a special or an album, a lot of that content has to get canned because now it's out there. What's your take on that? And how long after, let's say, a special or that album that you put out, is it until you do shows again? Because, I mean, you're working on content to try to go out with new stuff. Is there a time period between that generally is enough time for you to get back out with new content?
Yeah, I agree with the idea, but it's hard to do. It's hard to do that. I agree with that. There's still jokes that I'll do on the road that I did on my album, but I try to do as little as possible. I try to make it as many new ones as possible. But I think you should be going out right away. But if you can, but starting from scratch is really hard to do that. So I think the way I usually do it is it would be if it was right after the album came out, it'd be older jokes with like 1 thrown in and then 2 thrown in and then 3, like that kind of thing. So I think like most comics, it's not a matter of being like, oh, when do I get back out there? It's like for most guys I know, you're just out there all the time. So that that's not even a question. You would just, all right, when I start doing spots again, I'm going to try to make this percentage of it brand new because I have to get new material for another album, whatever.
Sure. Now, just from watching your half hour, which I loved, you're pretty animated. Not animated like a Sebastian, where he's like, body parts are moving 24/7. But I mean, you get into it, and And it's great. I think it obviously enhances to the show, but is that something that you force, or is that something that just happens up on stage? Because you see some comedians who literally say, okay, this is an act. This is being overdone to
Um,
convey a point. For you, is that just you? That's just you being you, right?
It's just me being me. Everybody who's on stage, I'd say 99% of comedians, it's going to be an amped up version of themselves.
Yeah.
So, but it depends on which way you are. So I know guys that are very understated one-liner guys that are way more animated off stage, but they know that's what works for them. So they crank up the awkwardness on stage to make it more funny. For me, that's the reverse of that. So I'm already pretty animated in my everyday life. And on stage, yeah, I'll probably I'll step it up a notch. Maybe if I'm, I think it's a matter of both. I think it's sometimes I'm trying to sell something, but a lot, but it is me. I don't think I'm not getting off the stage and I'm not an introvert. I'm not, I'm not a different person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is me, but it's like, yeah, I'm stepping it up because there was a performance aspect to it. And that's most people. I've only seen a couple people that aren't like that. And but I do think I try to be myself as much as I can on stage.
Absolutely. Now, what cities do you tend to do quite well in, and what cities are tougher for you? Because each comic has their town that they just have a hard time not bringing in the crowd, but bringing in locking people in, locking the audience in. What cities do you do well in, and which ones are rather tough for you as far as the audience goes?
East Coast, obviously, I do well there.
Obviously.
So my immediate area, so I'll do well in Jersey and Philly and all these, West Coast, like if I go to Chicago, it's good. I've done well there. There's just it's kind of like place to place, but I will say, well, one of the hardest weekends I ever had was in Youngstown, Ohio, but I've never gone back there. But I've also done other shows in Ohio that went well. But there is a thing with me in the Midwest where, depending on where it is, I might run into a problem because I talk really fast. So I went to Des Moines, Iowa once, and and they were so polite. Like I was noticing that they were like laughing hard at a joke and then stopping immediately. And I'd be like, that was weird. And it happened a whole show. And I was like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, do you ever notice strange. They're laughing and they stop and they robots? And they go, there's a reason for it. One of the comics, he goes, yeah, man, because you're doing that comic thing of where you start a joke, you tell it while they're laughing, you're starting the next joke. And they're so polite here. They're stopping because they stop laughing because you start talking. So, and I don't know if it was like that, if Des Moines is like that all the time.
That's strange.
But it happened a couple of different shows in Des Moines where, like, because I was talking again, they were like, oh, let's stop. And I was like, that was weird. It was like this weird dynamic. Yeah. Like you'd hear like a big pop and then like a whoop. Wait, he's talking again. And then they'd laugh again and they go, oh, and then it was like really, really weird.
That had to throw
so I would
off.
say Des Moines, it was like a kind of a difficult because of that. What'd you say?
I said that had to throw you off.
It did. It was like an odd show because of it. But so like it's partially my fault because I talk. I'm from New York and I talk fast, and I think people like. I try to slow it down, but if I get into something, I'm talking about something, I get
It is what it is.
Did you
in that show? Did you during that? Were you like, what the fuck's going on here? Are you guys good?
I think I did. And I think they were laughing because they didn't know what I was, but I said, what the hell is going on? Why are you guys acting? And then nobody told me. So I was like, all right, I just kept doing the show. And it wasn't like a bomb. But it was like a strange, I just chalked it up to like, they were just strange. And then somebody goes, no, it's because they're trying to be overly polite. And I was like, oh, all right, that's weird. Because we had normal shows on that weekend. I did like 5-6 shows and we had shows that went well. And I probably had one that went really bad. It just runs the gamut,
Sure. Absolutely. Now, we got a few more here. I know you're running for time. As a comedian, generally there's this social safety net from the PC police. It's comedy. It's the art. It's what makes it great. Sometimes with the way with the way things have been lately. Do you feel that comedy will be, getting closer to being on the line of censorship as far as what can or can't be done in the art itself because of how crazy things have been lately? Do you fear that that's going to be entering in to the industry itself, or do you think that's still going to be an open platform to say whatever the hell you guys want?
I think it's already happening.
Mm.
I think that it's people are getting like it happens, especially it happens in like little tiny clusters, right? So it'll happen, you know, you'll hear about a show a guy did and he got taped by mistake and he said something and then
So
people started to
frustrating.
cancel him. Or it'll happen on Twitter where somebody's canceled on Twitter. And then if that'll leak out to the real world, nobody knows until it does. And like, so people are starting to be canceled for like old bad jokes they've made. Yeah. So I think it's already happening because look at the Shane Gillis thing. Like, now, the flip side of it is the opinion that I have is I think you should be able to say whatever you want on a stage.
Sure.
Even if it's not funny, I think that the immediate reaction of the audience or the venue itself is going to be your clue that it's dumb or not funny or it doesn't work. Or you say the N-word on stage, you get punched in the mouth. Is that right either? No, you shouldn't have gotten punched. But you deal with the consequences. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like you said it. Like that guy shouldn't have done it either. But like, yeah, he's gonna punch you, whatever it is. Right. So like that's how I feel. But I think you should have the right to say whatever it is you want on the stage. But when it comes to these other people are getting mad about like, so the Shane Gillis thing, SNL fired him. I don't think they should have fired him. I don't think they should have fired him. I think he made a dumb joke on a podcast and it was stupid. But they're not. The SNL is not the Bill of Rights. It's a corporation more than a lot of corporations are. It's NBC. So am I expecting them to go, yeah, we're gonna stay on this free speech virtue and not fire this dude? No, it's a company. Everybody's so shocked and losing their minds about SNL doing that or Twitter banning people. It's like they're a company. They're not policed by the Bill of Rights. If it was like now, if he when somebody gets arrested for saying something on a stage in a venue, then you have a real issue that becomes into real free speech issues or on a corner or whatever it is, or, you know, it becomes McCarthyism, whatever you want to call it. So, but when it comes to these comedy controversies, I'm on the side of, I don't get mad at people for old racist tweets. Obviously, I think people make stupid jokes sometimes, or some jokes might be funny, but like just super passe, or like, I think times are changing. I think there has to be a happy medium within that of like, and that's never going to happen when you have people who have no interest in comedy policing these things. So you have a lot of people and a lot of times what happens, there's a guy that does it. This guy, Seth Simon. I don't know if you know who Seth Simon is.
No, I'll have to check him out.
But he's a guy and his main job is to go after comedians that say things that he doesn't agree with and try to get them canceled. That's like his main job.
That's horrible.
Yeah. But I really think if I had to guess, it comes down to an emotional thing for Seth. I think really what happens is I'm sure he tried to do comedy at some point and it didn't work out. And he's upset about it. And then also he's like, well, this is a way that I can be noticed. And this is like a way that it's completely wrong because, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he can have whatever opinion he wants about but to actively try to shut people's careers down or actively trying to shut people's personal lives down because you don't agree with what they said because they said something horrible and they said something is just plain wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. So I think if you really get down to the basis of it, a lot of people are, you know, because let's be honest, everybody has these shticks at both sides of it. The people that get mad about it, nobody's actually offended. Come on, we're like, especially if you're white. If you're a white guy, you're getting offended by something. Come on, get out of here. Right. So even if it is the idea that they won't let me have my free speech, it's like both sides of it are a lot of BS. If you really ask me, like I think what's happened in the past few years, which kind of sucks, is nobody wants to be silly anymore. That's why so many people got so excited about that Adam Sandler special on Netflix, because it was just straight up silly Adam Sandler instead of having to be like, oh, well, I'm what's her name? The one from where's she from? Australia? The one that was like, she was like, I'm quitting comedy because I was bullied and whatever it is. Or it's the other side of things where they're like, let me say my age jokes in peace. Like, it's just so extreme. It's so extreme to me where it's like, guys, just be funny. That should be the main factor is like, you're actually being funny and not just kind of a buzzkill, you know?
Absolutely. Now I have two more here. As far as a boost or not a boost, but as far as social media goes in the industry itself, when Twitter came out in 2006, I think that was a blessing for comics. One, you had a limit as far as characters go. You know, I think you could only do 140 at that time. That's about the length of a joke, a little bit or something punchy like that. For your opinion on there, do you think Twitter's existence has changed the way comedy is presented to the people.
Yeah, I think it's really hurt late night shows. I think it's good for comedy writers because, like I said, I use it for what it's good for, which is the idea of like testing something out and seeing if it gets a reaction. I think it's helped a lot of people's careers that were really funny writers.
Sure.
It's gotten them jobs, gotten them gigs, gotten them a whole bunch of stuff. But I think it's hurt the magic of the late night monologue because I think by 10 a.m. that day, all these jokes or very similar jokes have been written.
Right.
That anybody's going to say on because you have you basically just have a millions and millions of monologue writers if they want to be, you know. So yeah, I think it's completely changed. Like and it fits into what I was just saying. Like it's become this playground of it's just this wasteland of people just going arguing the permissions of saying certain jokes instead of it just being about something being funny. Like it's given a voice to a lot of people who are funny, but also given a voice to people who be like, how dare you do this? Like how dare you know? So it's like it's probably helped and it's hurt is the short answer. It's helped. I don't know if it's helped more than it's hurt because everybody now I think thinks of Twitter as like this island unto itself where it's like its own, it's like Ready Player One. It's like that universe in Ready Player One. It's like its own thing. It's because there's not that many people on Twitter, but it plays a factor in like, it can play a factor in your career. It can play a factor in you losing a job or somebody getting mad at you, a friend, whatever. It's a lot of, I think it's helped and it's hurt and it might've hurt more than it's helped.
Absolutely. And final question I have for you. I don't know if there could be one single moment, but maybe there is one single moment. Has there been a moment or moments in your life that have really been definitive and molded you into who you are today as a person?
That's a good question. I would say, well, my dad died when I was younger. That's probably definitely, yeah. When I was,
that's horrible. You smiled when you said that, but
no, because you made a funny sound. That's why you went. No, it's been a while. So
that was horrible delivery there, though.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. You're like, oh, your dad again? Like
hold on. Oh, my dad died. It was horrible.
No. So when I was 22, so
sad, man.
Or 21, what was I? Whatever I was, it was 2000. It was 22, or almost 22. I was like a month, and my dad died. So I think that's definitely shaped who I am today. I think
certainly.
I think from not having him around, I'm not sure how different I would be if my dad was around. So that's one thing. And then yes, stand up in general is just a giant event that has made me more confident and also have more anxiety at the same time. So like, I think that it's the most successful thing in my life that I've been in. So it's really bolstered my confidence, but also, you know, within the world of it, there's days that you're just a wreck based on what's going on career wise or what's going on set wise or joke wise or second by second during a set or a spot. So yes, stand up. And there was one part of my career, so I can point to an actual event is, it's funny. It made me trust myself more. It was a stand-up moment where there was like a stand-up competition thing at Caroline's. It was like New York's Funniest, whatever it was. And I went up, and before I went up, people were like, well, you better just do your set. You don't mess around at all. Just stick to your whatever. Do not, like whatever. They're just like, do it beat by beat. And I was like, oh my God. So I remember being so nervous and then going up there and having to think I had to stick to these words that I had. And I bombed like I've never bombed. I bombed so hardcore on this show. It was bad. So I told myself at that point, I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'll just do what's comfortable for me. And that's when things started kind of opening up, because about a month or maybe a few months later, I did an audition for a TV show where I went up, and it would have been the perfect spot to be stringent and stick to the bits. But I went up and I riffed for 15 seconds, and then I went into the set and I did well. And that ended up, I got one thing from that, then the next thing. So I guess that moment, which has to do with stand-up, made me, it made me realize how much confidence stand-up can give me in myself and to trust myself more. So that definitely has shaped, since that moment, has changed my personality. Definitely.
Absolutely. And comedy had a special thing for you and your dad. You watch comedy with your dad. So doing comedy is kind of maybe having your dad there with you along the way.
Absolutely. That's a very nice way to put it. Yeah, definitely. I think that he would really be excited about what's going on. And I think about that a lot. So yeah, so it's a way to connect. The only other way I connect to my dad is I go to the racetrack on my birthday. So that's two. Horse racing and comedy are the two
There
ways
you
to
go, man. There you go. Well, Sean Donnelly, man, I appreciate you doing this very much. I really do.
Thanks for having me, man.
You betcha, my friend. Take care of yourself.
All right. See you soon.
Alrighty. Peace.
Later. Bye.